The male protagonist Chun-ho was born in a family that was not very well off, and his father was more of a melancholy. Alcohol, drunk all day and then lied to the mother so since childhood. Chun-ho has learned boxing. The goal is not to be whipped by the person. Chun-ho has to run a shipper every day to make a living. But just because of a misunderstanding at work, he was dismissed by his boss. Chun-ho doesn't love it either. I like this job anymore, so I asked my boss to pay my salary. However, the owner is a fake fox. Instead, he used all of these reasons for another reason to determine Chun-ho's salary. Instead, he didn't say much, but directly jumped his horse into the pawn shop time to get rid of habits. Because of his tall and healthy body, very quickly Chun-ho was called by the motherland. With his legs and military service, the male protagonist had to march day and night along with the Manchu practiced harsh discipline. The mealtime is only 3 minutes. If you don't do well, the whole squad. Penalty life is no different from hell on earth. That makes Chun-ho extremely tired and homesick. After 3 months of hard training and having a height of over 1m75, the male lead was classified as a military officer. The task is to be responsible for guarding the base has just been transferred to the military residence. He had come across the image of the old ghost bullying the new ghost. The bully is Sergeant Hong. Because he was about to be discharged in this room, he was a colonel just when Sergeant Hong was easily coaxing his subordinates. Because the other guy is also an old soldier, but he can't easily coax the new nail in. So Hong aggressively pushed his head into the nail. Soon after, this guy turned to Chun-ho. He was about to push his head into the nail. I didn't expect Chun-ho to have the courage to dodge. That made Sergeant Hong extremely angry, and when he was about to break him into the pulp. Fortunately, the Golden Army was formed from that day. The male lead took on the task of guarding the military police prison. Right here, he saw the image of the expensive father beating his mother, and she wonders why Chun-ho can only stand and watch. It turns out that it is all just a dream. At this moment, the bastard blew the trumpet to get the whole team up, because he had lost the empty ice cream and the turmeric. So this guy made the whole team suffer when he came to the male protagonist's prison. Then he found the letter from his mother. Just like that, Hong didn't bother to ask for permission. And having read the contents of the letter, he didn't even forget to mock the other party. That made Chun-ho extremely hot-blooded, so he asked his seniors to stop. Seeing that Chun-ho showed an expression of resistance, the bastard threatened to carry the hot goods, then pound the Chun-ho to coax like a honeycomb. But before the dark drought could happen, a senior sergeant named Park walked in. Lon called out to the whole group to go out and pull out the grass. However, the sergeant wanted to meet the male lead alone. However, before he could say anything, Sergeant Park had to go on a business trip, so he told him to stay here and wait for him. Unexpectedly, until 7:30 p.m., the sergeant still did not come back, but only saw a member of the DP team appear. DP is the team to catch deserters, intending to evade responsibility and leave the army. But this corporal didn't have any professional appearance, but just sat in 3 flowers and talked about boat training. From the notebook on Sergeant Park's desk, the male protagonist discovers that a deserter is being hunted. As soon as Sergeant Park returned, he gave the potential a piece of advice. It is very likely that the deserter is a waiter at a tavern, because deserters cannot use an ID card. But the pub accepts people without interfering, so it is very likely that the target is hiding in the pub. Sergeant Park also admitted it, realizing that Jong-ho was a talented person, so the sergeant offered to invite him to join the DP team. Hearing this, Jong shouted a little hesitantly, but when he saw the whole team pulling grass outdoors, the male protagonist agreed. After that, Jong-ho was entrusted with the task of catching the digger the day before. Since the DP team usually acted in pairs, the person accompanying him was the previous corporal. But after leaving the military barracks, the blind guy didn't want to go on duty. But he invited him to go to barbecue, and even dragged him into a karaoke bar to hug the Western taste. Although he didn't want to, but because he was in a hurry, he had no other choice. Matt Jin also shared the reason for enlistment, which was because he wanted his father to be elected before the chairman of the district. Because he drank and danced too much, he asked to go out to discharge the flood, and as soon as he licked his cigarette, a young man appeared. Then he called out to ask for a piece of fire, so he kindly gave the lighter to the other party, then continued to come back overnight with everyone. But the next morning, Sergeant Park angrily called and said that the deserter had logged out. It turned out that the guy who begged for fire in the middle of yesterday was the deserter they were looking for. It turns out that because he was bullied badly in the army, he decided to free himself by using a lantern lighter to burn charcoal. Knowing the love, the family was in pain, as if cutting and shedding tears, shouting to see that the rope was finally over. Realizing that he had continued to kill people, he shouted with great regret. If only the corporal had been willing to look for someone in the first place, things wouldn't have gone so far. Too angry, plus regret was intervening, the shouts were constantly chaotic at the corporal's striker's jaw. Fortunately, the sergeant stopped it in time, otherwise a murder occurred here. Because punching superiors is taboo in the army, Zhong Hao was locked in a cell. Seeing that Zhong shouted that he had not put anything in his stomach, the senior was emotionally hoping to give him a package of cake. He was the one who was bullied the day before, but Zhonghua felt somewhat warm. Outside, Captain Lim was appointed to the military police and was Lieutenant Park superior. As soon as they met, he made a big face, constantly asking difficult questions to the lieutenant. But after knowing the story of the main group, the captain wanted to get rid of the glasses of the DP team. And the target who needs to pay attention to that name is the children and grandchildren of their fathers. He was even released, continuing to work in the DP team. But when he returned to the military police room, the sergeant did not stop singing that. Zhong shouted that he had spent the night with Sergeant Park, so he treated him like that. But Corporal Han came to interrupt. He was the captain of the DP team, and is a kind person who always loves juniors. Because Corporal Han was seriously injured, he had to be absent from the DP team recently. Very quickly, they were assigned a task by Sergeant Park. The leader this time is the middle landmark, who is also the one who was bullied in the fight. The last time he was seen was in Incheon train, when the target was about to self-destruct but was rescued by the people. In order to carry out the search for people, Corporal Han taught the main group how to trace the target left when using the network. But to know the information you have to pay a very high fee, and they are not progressing. So I looked for relatives of the middle marker to interrogate. The first was Young Mok's girlfriend, but she said they had broken up and had no longer kept in touch. But Corporal Han didn't think so. He affirmed that Zhong Mo still loved her very much. Because he talked a lot about his girlfriend in his diary, knowing that the girl was not suddenly smoky, he promised to contact him if he met the middle of nowhere. The male protagonist thought that the corporal was behind the flower lady to win the love of his girlfriend. So the money was back and forth due to the diary right of the middle landmark. After that, they continued to go to the place where Zhong Mo used to work and his relatives, even Zhong Mok's biological mother. She was extremely worried about her son. She also gave the two people money to remember to find the middle landmark. The male protagonist refused, but Corporal Han did not hesitate to accept it. Because he had been searching for the target for 12 days, the male protagonist suspected that the middle mark was crooked. Corporal Han didn't think so. He said that 9 out of 10 people who had deserted, most of them called their relatives before they died. At the right time, the French sergeant called and told him that he was bullied during the battle. It turned out that the middle mold fell asleep right away looking at the pigs. So they made him wear crutches and poured water inside. What an evil, evil person. At this time, because the allowance had run out, Corporal Han had reduced the difficulty of begging for room debt with the hotel owner. The male lead is also on the side pretending to be a supporting surname. So the two of them succeeded in catching each other. After taking a shower and applying the ink, they used the money given by the mother to trace the location of the target's network. Very quickly, the two of them went to a shop and began to check them one by one. Suspecting that someone came to disrupt the business, the owner threatened to report to the police. At the moment when they encountered a suspicious object, without a trace of deduction, the two of us rushed to control the opponent's mind. I didn't expect that this was not a landmark. At this time, the cheerleader looked in the direction of the subway and said that he already knew where the target was. Because sleep is constantly disturbed, after digging the ship, the middle mold is always in a state of sleep. That's why he almost worshipped his grandparents. The reason why the middle mold is always seen at the terminal late at night. Because it is a place where you feel safe, comfortable, and can sleep without fear of anyone coming to catch you. Sure enough, the two of them found him at the last station, but the middle of the hill didn't run away. On the way to escort the target to the military barracks, the male protagonist gave him the phone to talk to his mother. When he caught the mold that kept falling, he apologized to her and promised not to cause trouble again. Because at the beginning of the year and the DP team had captured 7 people, Captain Lim couldn't help but praise 2 people. They even gave them a few days off. After that, the male protagonist was seen meeting Bin not shoveling cotton. Even though he is a superior, he still has a lot of affection for his juniors because he knows that he is on leave. So I asked him to help me have fun. Because of course, Shobong is a true enthusiast of drawing anime reboots. After that, Corporal Han opened the bell and went to his house to play. But he hadn't even chewed the whole package of shrimp. Then the priest called to assign the task again. Immediately, 2 people set off from Busan to support the DP team there to catch the rebels. But when the 2 sides block each other's faces, they don't stop praising the other. And the object of digging the ship this time is named Trang Min. He used to work for a gang for hire, so it can be said that this is a dangerous object. They had traced the location of Zhang Ming. Most likely he was at his biological father's house or his girlfriend's house. But the DP team on the other side chose to go to his biological father's house. The rest belonged to 2 people. But Corporal Han was extremely frustrated, and he realized that the enemy was just trying to catch the target in front of them. So it was for the location of my girlfriend's house. But Zhong Hao soon realized that, so he memorized the address of his father's house. But the name of this page is not good at all. After being discharged from the army, he went home to eat and sell his father, and even shouted fake hugs like a bowl of patties. But when the male protagonist came to the house, the father held his foot to help Trang Min escape. That's why Zhang Ming's name is not a medium voice. Jumping lightly, he was ready to face them and then continuously threw objects to block the sky for them. By the time Corporal Han blocked his head, suddenly his back was tight. So Trang Min couldn't help but get married evenly. But the male lead caught him. The posture of both sides shouted to the scouting team because they were both true boxers. So the game seems to be on par. In front of the opportunity to shout and push the opponent down. But when he got up, he was fatally thrown by Zhang Ming, and he quickly ran away. That made Sergeant Park extremely angry. Captain Lim couldn't help but make an exception. He was cursed by the senior on the Busan side like a slap in the water. So the captain immediately bowed to the head of Sergeant Park. But because he was his superior, the lieutenant had to take a step. Zhong Hao and Corporal Han were in the hospital to convalesce, when the DP team in Busan came to the hospital again. I thought you guys were like, you found your goal and then you let it live. But at that moment, Sergeant Park called, thinking that he would be disciplined in a battle. The sergeant wanted the 2 of them to catch Zhang Ming in front of the Busan team. After that, the male protagonist called Min Not Hao. He was a member of the little team in the army. Trung Ho wanted to ask him to look up an IP address. That was the IP of a member of the Busan team. At first, Ming Not Hao refused, but after shouting promise to buy him a cube, then Ming Not Ho accepted the offer. Immediately, they looked for the IP address, which was a shopping mall. After asking about the receptionist, the 2 learned that Trang Min's girlfriend used to work here. The receptionist even revealed that Trang Min's name was Trey Bao. So the 2 of them went up to the bar according to the girl's words. After asking all the brothers, I learned that Trang Min only works part-time here. That is, he also worked in many other places. They even said that Trang Min was the one who clung to his girlfriend's skirt, and she was extremely pampered by him. To conduct the investigation, they traveled to 22 bars in the city, with the desire to find the box of the name of the page. Luckily, at the last bar they met Trang Min's girlfriend. Therefore, he pretended to be a boy and very quickly he approached the girl. She even invited her to go for morning coffee. It is known that the girl is named Minzy. Through the conversation, the main year realized that she still had a lot of love for Trang Min. She even worked at a bar to satisfy him with money. The next day, the master came to see Minzy. She said that she wanted to ask him for something. After that, Minzy went to meet the boss at work, then asked for a salary advance. But the hostess flatly refused, because Minzy had not even sent her ex-grandmother. Knowing that the girl was in need of money, she asked the corporal to borrow money. Corporal Han is also very clever. He got on the phone and came to the Musen team, saying that he would make money for me to help them. Before they vomited 3 million pants for him. Because they didn't want to do it but still wanted to have food, the 2 brothers agreed immediately. So the male lead should give that money to Minzy. Seeing such a kind guy, Minzy also gave a gift in return. But in fact, this is the plan of the male lead. Since he knew that Minzy would give that money to the name Min, he took her as a decoy. Sure enough, at this time, Minzy went to see her boyfriend. Trang Min wanted her to fall in love with money, but Minzy refused. She said she would give it to me, but can you go have a meal with me? However, this money is boldly stolen. Not only did not accept it, but he also directly shot and robbed his pockets. However, the team of the floor has appeared. However, Trang Min was not right at all, but easily defeated the comrades one by one. Fortunately, the male protagonist appeared in time, and without many words, the 2 immediately rushed into the flat. The 2 sides did not stop eating patties, but thanks to the non-criminal bodyguards. Zhonghu easily punched the opponent, and the blood refused to lose. The man had already begun to pull out the knife. Therefore, Corporal Han rushed to the post in time and easily handed the iron rod to Zhang Min. But the money he stole from his girlfriend, sadly, was a gift slip. The real money was hidden by Minzi under the lid of sadness. She immediately called to thank Zhonghu and immediately left silently. Because the male lead team had caught the front page, Dai Hui Lim was extremely angry. He gave them this task, the purpose of which was to flatter the division commander of the Buisan team, who didn't expect that his own team was the catcher. So Dai Hui Lim aimed at the center and vented his anger. The park manager also distorted his superiors. It was also extremely bitter. He lost money, and now he has been arrested for his work. Because he was threatened like that by the park lieutenant, the lieutenant was also very angry, so he had to vent his anger on the middle howler and the Korean corporal, and even cut off their leave. Just when the park howler appeared, he let the park howler know that his father had been hospitalized. Therefore, the lieutenant was asked to leave for the day. Then he immediately went to the hospital room to meet his father. But not only did he not change his personality at all, but he also affirmed that Zhonghu was not his son. It's just that he didn't bring money to him. Even so, the middle howler was extremely angry, and he even said that the day he was stupid, I would laugh very loudly at that time. Later, when he returned home, he saw Corporal Han here. Since the mother still refused to leave the old man, Zhonghu left in frustration and wanted to return to the military barracks right now. But then Corporal Han let the mother and daughter talk privately, and finally the middle howler said the virtues in his heart, and wondered why she didn't run away from him like the mother didn't reciprocate, but only gave money to her son. However, the middle howler quietly left in silence. On the other hand, after being arrested and returned to the military barracks, the mother of the lieutenant went to visit her son. But sadly, the bullies are not punished, they are just transferred to another unit. Talking about it, the mother howled extremely angrily, replaced the integrity of the Taoist who had comforted her and promised a trial to take place. After that, the commander of the 3rd Division, that is, the commander of the male protagonist's unit, had a meeting with the Grandmaster and the sergeant. The commander affirmed that he had to cover up the affairs of the landmarks, because if exposed, the ace would definitely affect the image of the army. Although they were very frustrated with this, the two could not resist the orders of their superiors. The next day, the DP team continued to be assigned tasks. The subject this time was a sergeant with the name Shout, jumping from the delivery line with his bare hands. Through his comrades, it is known that Sergeant Ho is a person who knows money. Although he suffered a shoulder injury, he still participated in helicopter rope escalation training with the aim of receiving an allowance salary. Above all, Sergeant Ho is very good at betting. The whole squad had never beaten him. That's because the sergeant shouts using third software, which he always applies, and the Monty trick to win the bet. What is Monty singing? FG will explain in detail in the next paragraph. Later, the male lead group went to the sergeant's house, discovering that he had been living with his grandmother since childhood. However, the grandmother was frightened, even mistakenly recognizing Corporal Han as her nephew. So they didn't collect anything more. However, when they returned, they encountered a team in the middle of the house. It turned out that this neighborhood was being demolished for construction. To conduct the investigation, the two went to meet the other party's college friend. Through the narration, it is known that the sergeant shouted that he was the enemy of the school. Moreover, he did not play swimming at all. As a forward-thinking person, but because the amount of money provided by the government is too small, so he did enough work at school to make money. Here, the glasses friend also explained about the Monty Hall problem. It is a problem to improve the selection rate. For example, if you choose one of the 3 doors, the chances of choosing the right one will be 1 in 3. But when you know one answer is wrong and you choose to go to another door, then the correct ratio is no longer 50-50, but 23. Therefore, you only need to change the initial profit result, and Ace will definitely find the right door. However, after hearing about this problem, Zhonghu and Corporal Han didn't understand anything. Just when someone called, suddenly the other end of the line was the hall sergeant. He advised them to stop chasing him. Hearing that, the two people couldn't help but be surprised. How did Sergeant Hall know they were after him? The two people immediately looked at the 4 sides around, and suddenly found a sloppy person dressed in black. Instead, they immediately followed the target, but alas, they lost track. She was even lured into a women's dormitory. Therefore, the 2 brothers were dismissed by Sergeant Park Tao in a battle. After that, the male protagonist returned to the military police bedroom, when the soldier asked him to teach. Then he directly attacked and deflected the jaw of a new soldier. Because the fool is no longer as gentle as before, but there is no fire to make it smoky. In addition to being bullied by the Sergeant Huang, the confused man was also attacked by other seniors. At this time, Su Gong had made the new soldiers line up, and then constantly gave each of them a battle. Instead, the male protagonist was extremely disappointed, so he called the rookie group to take a break. That made the confused person extremely hot just as Sergeant Hong appeared. Then he ordered Su Gong to teach the new recruits. Yet he couldn't do it, so he directly stomped on the coin hand. After that, he also forced the male protagonist to physically impact a new soldier. He even made a model for the lake to see. At the moment when he had not been beaten by the male protagonist for a single battle, Corporal Han came to obstruct him. Then he dragged Trung Ho into a dark room, and then pretended to teach his juniors as if it was true. Zhong Hu was also very cooperative with Hop, so they caught the Sergeant Emperor. But here, the male protagonist narrated the Monty Hall problem, applied to the life of the Hall soldiers. It is known that he dropped out of school to enlist in the army. If it is hypothesized that he did it to abandon her, then there will be no more incidents. But if you take the hypothesis of protecting her, there will be two events. First, she was mentally retarded. The second is that the house has been demolished, so he has reinstated to earn money for her badge. And the day before, Sergeant Ho discovered that the group of male protagonists were walking and had not caught themselves. After thinking and calculating for a while, they knew where the sergeant was hiding. So very quickly they found the other party. The sergeant coughed and tried to run, but was immediately recaptured. He wanted to see his grandmother for the last time, but his grandmother didn't recognize her grandson. Even so, he still came down to apologize to her. After that, Sergeant Ho also said the reason why he had to turn around. That's because she was mentally ill, and the house would be dismantled sooner or later. So he joined the nursing team, the purpose of which was to earn money to send her to a nursing home. After hearing such an elegant story, Corporal Han opened the chain for the enemy. They let him stay to earn money, and put her in a nursing home. After finishing their work, they had to surrender themselves. Knowing that, his tears kept spreading and he couldn't help but thank the two of them. On the other side, the cattle were guarding the base. Then the guy continued to bully him. Han made him go out with his pants to squirrel again, but this time the cotton animal refused. Instead, he helped him like two shadows, unable to endure anymore. The cotton animal resisted and kept pulling his hat in his face. Then he walked out of the military barracks. Very quickly, this matter came to the commander. The park wanted to open a large-scale search and ask for support from the police. That made the commander very angry because the media world would know about it. At that time, the status of the army would reach the bottom of society, so he wanted to search for the cotton cattle in secret. So this matter was entrusted to the male lead group. To conduct the investigation switch, Zhong Hao went to the art center that Su Cotton thought taught. Then a student told me an important fate. It was a professional personal website drawn by him. The sergeant and corporal went to the close friend of the same unit of the stuffed animal. The fat man also told them that the recent vacation of the cotton cow had a very strange expression. At that time, the two of them were going to the movies, when suddenly someone bumped into him and cursed him. So the animal became agitated, threatening to kill the enemy. At this time, Zhong Hu had come to visit the old man, that is, the comrade who had been repeatedly slapped in the face. At first, this guy was still very stubborn and provoked. But after being shouted at and threatened to expose the dark things in his sleep, then his attitude became less subtle and told him something important. It turned out that the sergeant who specialized in catching others had now come to sleep. But before saying goodbye to the unit, he wanted to wash away the old story he had told him. But the cotton animal didn't think so, so he wanted him to apologize to him. However, the sergeant only apologized for the occasion. This made the cotton animal extremely hot in his heart. And at this time, after having a personal web password account of the stuffed animal, according to the investigation, they discovered a new file that had just been uploaded. It's an anime story that depicts the life full of humiliation in the 5 books of stuffed animals. He even redrew the process of digging the ship at night. Suddenly, there was an image of a vaccine animal to take revenge on Sergeant Hong. Noticing that there were few holding too much, they traced the nearest access IP address of the animal. He was at the forest station at the foot of the bus heading to Seoul. Receiving the news, the male protagonist immediately went there. Even the DP Busan team withdrew one hand. After that, they immediately split up to search. But then the male lead caught a stuffed animal on the bus. He wanted to stop everything. However, the cotton animal directly attacked him. Then Renshu jumped the door to escape. So the Busan team caught him, but only about a second later. At this time, Sergeant Park also encountered the subject. From then on, a terrible chase took place. Get the opportunity to hide in the movie. But very quickly, Corporal Han found him. I'm also very tired. Vaccinated cotton animals were delivered, fearing that it would affect people's lives. So Corporal Han closed his eyes to let him escape. Because there was a wounded soldier, the commander became a closed man. But he directly discharged his anger on the Great Emblem. On the other hand, after being discharged from the army, the emperor went to work part-time at a convenience store. In the army, he was the lord of the Green Forest. But on the outside, this guy was just a kitten, being cursed by the boss like a dog, not daring to get along with the summer. It wasn't until he got home that he dared to curse back. At the same time, the male protagonist came to the house and warned that the cattle were chasing him. But this same soldier didn't bother at all. All the way he was on the first floor of the school. Cotton wool has appeared. So, Chun Ho immediately followed the other party. Although they were run over by a car, they still stood up and chased them. After chasing each other 2 pounds of termites away, in the end, Chun Kof cornered him. He was going to chain the senior right here. Who would have thought that he would bring the electricity with him, and then immediately coughed in one place. After that, he went to the emperor's house. I didn't expect that my daughter-in-law had already put it outside the door before. He even challenged the opponent. The horse was familiar with the old road, and he didn't stop slapping the trunk in his face. But cotton animals are no longer as cowardly as they used to be. Seeing when he lost his guard, he immediately gave him a shot in his hand. Then he ran away, laughing in a frenzy. So he was blocked by the male lead group. The front emperor also caught the shadow flowing down. But he was stopped immediately by Corporal Han. On the way, escorting to the military barracks, the park officer did not stop explaining the morality to him. However, the animal was angry. He himself was caught with seeds, but the top only knew how to stand around and watch. Just like that, the cotton cattle did not stop getting excited. And an accident is inevitable. So the cotton animals easily survived. Then he was like a ghost looking for the emperor, directly beating the bastard unconscious on the spot. After the recent accident, the male lead and the park crew were taken to the hospital. Fortunately, the condition is stable. Because the animal had injured a soldier, it quickly reached the police. But the commander refused their help. Instead, he summoned a task force and was ready to set out to pursue the target. Dai Hui Lim also felt dissatisfied about this, because this is just a deserter, not a terrorist. However, he was the superior and he had no other choice. Dai Hui Lim had to inform the sergeant. At this time, the emperor was taken to a tunnel. In order to take revenge for the catching of seeds in the army, the stuffed animal was constantly impregnated with the opponent's jasmine, causing him to constantly spit out blood. However, the emperor sent a signal to the police for help, so they quickly found the tunnel. But when the two of them went inside to search, the cotton animal did not divide the hostages elsewhere. The south main side has also arrived, and the two disciples went inside, and he will be here in charge of the task force. Inside, when he lost his vigilance, the emperor began to resist. Just as the police arrived, they didn't recognize who the hostages were. So he rushed to attack the police. Looking at the fierce fluttering on both sides, the emperor hurriedly carried the whole thing and ran away. Zhong Ho also came to the place and saw the police officer being scolded like that. He wanted him to stop, but he didn't expect that the police were going to beat him up. Finally, the cotton wool rammed the three into the iron fence, and he took the opportunity to leave. However, the male lead followed, replacing the cotton cattle that were not delivered to the juniors, and warned Zhong Ho not to follow him. Outside the channel, the commander carried the task force to the place, but the park soldiers stopped it. He insisted that the stuffed animal was not his father's name, and even stopped his superior's punch. At this time, no matter how far the emperor ran up, he was found by the cotton herd. Falling into such a dead end, the emperor had played the card 1,000 times, begging the animal to test his mistakes. The cotton beast expressed the dissatisfaction in his heart. It is also because of your humiliating bullying that I have intended many times from the world. At the right time, Corporal Han came to the place and constantly advised the enemy to stop. But the head of the cotton squirrel was cold, so he asked Corporal Han to dodge quickly. Corporal Han wanted to shout to stop it, But he didn't expect that the animal had already fired at the heavens. Hearing the sound of his stomach shining like that, the commander wanted to expose the story again, but he ordered the task force to do the job. At this time, the Kof school also came to the three people. He said positive things to convince the senior from the Intention newspaper. However, the task force pulled inside. Dozens of machine guns were aimed at the target, which made the animal extremely panicked. He then told the main dam that so that things could change, then you have to do something yourself. Very demanding, the cotton animal directly squeezes the grass and snails on the spot. Seeing the senior like this, his heart couldn't help but ache. Also because of this unsuccessful arrest, Captain Leem was transferred from the throne, and Sergeant Park was disciplined. The next day, the senior prosecutor of the Military Investigation Department went to see Sergeant Park. His name is Choi Suk-woo and he is the sergeant's superior. To install the case lick of the cotton bottle, Suk-woo falsified the testimony of other officers and soldiers. Thinking that the cotton cattle had a mental illness, they rebelled and then led to self-destruction. The sergeant immediately protested because he knew the motive that led to his suicide. It was all due to being bullied in the army. Instead, Choi Suk-woo became angry. Briefly, the sergeant knew his fate, just as the lieutenant interrupted. Then he immediately pulled the sergeant out. He also doesn't care about the superior disease, but he thinks the sergeant must agree with that statement. Otherwise, the case will go to a military court. At that time, not only their division will die, and both the male protagonist and the Korean corporal will also be swamped. Sergeant Park was disciplined. Corporal Han was hospitalized due to psychological obsession, so there was no one to protect the lake. Therefore, he continued to be favored by the old soldiers. They even made him go to squeeze water for the fathers to bathe. As for them, they just need to stand in one place to release smoke. Because he had not yet failed, the other commander was kicked in the ass. Instead, there was another commander who was equally weak. The heart of the army continued to operate, but Corporal Han was convalescing, so he let Jong Ho be the chief. At the same time, there was another soldier, a new soldier named Lu Trishan. The next day, the two of them came out of the military barracks. Jong Ho enthusiastically taught me, just like Corporal Han once taught me. So this stupid face didn't bother at all. It turned out that Lu Jishan was his father's noisy son. He asked his father to join the fucking team, because Lu Jishan thought that it was a team of prostitutes who could walk freely, even when the male lead is not present. This nephew also spoke ill of him to his friends. He said that he could fool them all by pretending to be stupid. At this time, the male protagonist was repairing the waterboard when he encountered it outside. The first soldier of the small army was bullied by the old soldiers. The leader said that it was only because his cousin who specialized in catching fish failed, and the ship's task force had to be disbanded. Hearing this, the first soldier was extremely angry, because it's obvious that when you came out, you guys were bullied by the same soldier, and you still wanted to follow him. Hearing that, they didn't have many words, but they were as fierce as a pig. The male protagonist witnessed this whole scene. At this moment, a ghost appeared next to him. He says that things still can't be changed. Hearing this, Zhonghua was no longer shy and went to find those old soldiers. Brother Black wondered, why did you do that to the first soldier? Not only did they not respond, but directly gave him shoes in the face. Then he constantly let go of his sluggish words and shouted. The male protagonist has endured to the limit, so he directly fell a name. He was about to pick up the other guy who suspected that the mistake was silently interrupted. Just yesterday he was still sitting and shouting. But after witnessing such a stiff shout, to be honest, I had to throw out my pants. But Sergeant Park found out about their actions. Therefore, the referee was penalized for running around the field. After that, after thinking about it over and over again, as well as to protect the juniors below, the sergeant agreed to do as the captain said. But the pen had not touched the paper when suddenly the golden warning bell rang. When I asked, I found out that there was a shooting in the prohibited area. As it turned out, the fat guy who was the best friend of the stuffed animal was also a bullet man who was bullied in his pants. After the death of his friend, the fat man could no longer bear it, so he directly pulled out his gun. Then he kept pounding in the bullying tub. When he was done, he dug the ship out of his pants. Very quickly, this came to the DP team. Realizing that the deserter was armed, he was secretly afraid of the indentation and did not dare to reopen the DP team. Therefore, Zhong Hong planned to go and inform the above. Unexpectedly, Sergeant Park had been reinstated. Because of the mistake of conscience, he sank from the team, so the sergeant said that Corporal Han would return to the team. After the death of the animal, Corporal Han was psychologically shadowed. But after checking, he was not sick at all. However, he couldn't speak. Just when the TV broadcast the news of the fat boy, so Corporal Han couldn't help but feel it. It turned out that a few months ago, Corporal Han had caught an old soldier bullying the fat man. Seeing such a disgruntled image, he chased the old soldiers away. But Corporal Han was extremely regretful. If he said at that time that he would help him later, then things didn't go that far. After that, a press conference on the fat boy's case was held. We are compared to the deputy captain of the military special investigation team. She showed everyone photos at the scene. There were 2 soldiers and 11 people were injured. In order to avoid the consequences, the military line affirmed that after determining the target location, then they will send the fat man back to the motherland. The situation has become tense. On the other hand, at Mr. Fat's chicken shop, the people standing here are extremely worried. There were even family members of the victims. After that, Mr. Fat's biological mother came out and apologized to the victim's family. But the mother insisted that her child did so because of the suffocators in the army. That day, the victim's family was even more excited. At this time, Corporal Han had returned. However, he still can't open his mouth. Seeing this, Zhong Ho couldn't help but feel sorry for his senior. On the other hand, Truong Xuefu and Colonel So were having a conversation. Suddenly, the sergeant and the captain rushed in. Captain Lim didn't understand why she had to attack the fat man in public opinion. In this way, it was no different from forcing him into a dead end. But at this time, the fat man live-streamed the air. He admitted what he did and exposed the suffocation in the army. If you don't do that, add that they will kill you first. And he didn't understand. The upper one knew the story but only ignored it. Hearing the things my son had to go through in the army, it was so shocking that the mother was unconscious. At this moment, Sergeant Park discovered that his superiors were doing something suspicious. Therefore, when the sergeant left, the sergeant and the captain broke into the room. Suddenly discovered a confidential document. But before he could see that the Exodus had returned. Therefore, relying on the name of a higher level, Lieutenant Commander Liang forced him to speak his face. Hey, the face to this guy. Just like that, with only 2 kicks, Sergeant Park had to lie on the floor to suffer. Then he directly locked the 2 of them in the room. Soon after, Lieutenant Colonel So received his daughter's phone. Mom said that the father was in need of help. It turned out that Lieutenant Colonel So and Captain Lim used to be husband and wife. But because of conflicting opinions, they divorced. At this time, the sergeant offered to join in the search for the fat man. The lieutenant colonel said there was no need to look for them anymore because he would have to find them himself. The fat man's side was because he had run out of cowardly medicine, so he quietly went to the pharmacy. Here, he saw a video of his mother being criticized and cursed by the world. And so, the fat eye button kept rolling on the eyelashes. This is all the plan of Lieutenant Colonel So. She released the video to provoke him. Knowing this, the sergeant was extremely angry. Even so, Lieutenant Colonel So didn't understand why they had to shake up for a crime. But at this time, the army had surrounded the shops of Mr. Fat's house. The sniper spirit has also built a place. They decided to take his mother as a decoy. Sure enough, at this time, he appeared with the grenade in his hand. He was willing to endlessly cooperate with the other party. However, dozens of machine guns were pointing at him. The situation has become increasingly tense because the fat boy has a hostage in his hands. So Lieutenant Colonel So was hesitant when he gave the order to shoot. At this time, Sergeant Park called Corporal Han. He said they had to do something to save Fat Boy's life. Immediately afterwards, Corporal Han live-streamed the scene. The purpose was to stop the army from giving the order to fire. But very quickly, the network operator interrupted the video. Zhong Ho and Corporal were also controlled on the spot. And when Lieutenant Colonel So was about to give the order to shoot, then the mother inadvertently ran to her son and prevented the fat man from pulling out the grenade pin. Someone stood up to protect themselves. He hugged his mother and cried like a child. In order to save the awakening before the parachute, the Brigadier General stepped out to play the hero, slowly retrieved the grenade in the fat man's hand. He said that the fat boy would be punished, but there would be a fair trial. On the outside, that's all he said. But behind his back, he wanted to be at the bottom of the area. Chalk blocked the trial. Because if the trial takes place, the press and human rights centers. It will attack, then the parliament will also get involved. Thinking that the Middlecoff and the corporal will be sent to prison. When it foils the army's plans. She expected them to be awarded a certificate of merit again. But Sergeant Park realized they wanted to close this case in a positive direction. The next day, the DP team continued to be assigned the task. The object of digging the ship this time is Sun Min. As a third-gender human being, so he was suffocated and humiliated in the army. But when he heard this name, Corporal Han was a little stunned. Turned out that 10 months ago, Corporal Han and the long-haired man. He has not caught Sun Ming yet. Before that, Sun Ming was extremely panicked, so he aggressively made a knife into the stomach of the corporal. At this time, they have found the right restaurant for those 3 days, but there was no information about Sun Ming. So the two of them asked the police, was told by a policeman. Sun Min's name is on the customer list of a deep social gang in the city. Very quickly, they pretended to be customers looking for the leader. After that, this guy led the two into a closed car. But when they opened the door, there were dozens of strong jokers. Too welcoming because they are suspicious. The two of them are both Zhou Din soldiers. The school wall will be upside down here. Unexpectedly, the police arrived at the place. It turned out that the police had borrowed 2 people as a decoy, with the aim of approaching this year's deep social gang. Without many words, both sides rushed into the flat. Realizing the critical situation, the leader hurriedly ran for his life. Instead, the group of male protagonists immediately followed him, from chasing barefoot to playing cake picking. Instead, the leader was as happy as the day of the great victory. Unexpectedly, Corporal Han drove an electric car to chase after him. "Oh my friend, just make a piece of water and then continue cycling. But because I had to strain my buttocks to hold the buttocks too much, so my daughter-in-law is extremely thirsty." However, the male protagonist chased him to the place. Instead, he immediately pulled out the cat. But he hasn't even slashed a shot. The guy was shouted straight out without a muzzle. Then they angrily carried their daughter-in-law back to the station to ask about it. After looking at the photo of Sun Ming, it turned out that, after stabbing Corporal Han in the stomach, Sun Ming panicked and looked for the leader. He begged him to help him flee abroad as a fake identity. He even mentioned that he was ready to self-destruct. After all, the leader pointed him to the person who forged his identity. Present, Sun Min lives in an apartment. He had to work 2 jobs at once. During the day, I go to work for hire, and when I come, I go to the bar to be a singer. Because here he must live true to his status. According to the leader's instructions, the group of male protagonists came to Mr. Chuan's headquarters to fake their identities. They pretended to be deserters and offered to apply for jobs here. So Mr. Chum immediately agreed. Because he himself was a deserter, so he understood the feelings of the two of them very well. But before they understood what lame pants were, someone discovered their identity. Therefore, the 2 brothers played 36 cards. Running is a real book. And they frantically carried the dumps after them. At this time, Zhong shouted in a dark tone. Then suddenly a girl pulled him inside. It turned out that this girl was Minzi. He was shouted for help to borrow money. But after parting with the name next to the middle of the mine, now she was the owner of a tavern. Soon after, the male protagonist saw a photo of Sun Min at the restaurant. Minzi explained that he used to be a star at this restaurant. But then Sun Min was offered to sing by a famous actor at the conference in London. So Sun Min agreed. Just a few days later, he was also made a fake passport by Mr. Chum. Even so, Minzi hopes he won't be arrested. The next time we meet again, she will invite him to eat a meal with the amount of money per sugar. After that, he and Corporal Han arrived at the airport, and was given an important clue by the ceremony. A few days ago, Sun Min came to go through exit procedures for London, but they have discovered the fake projection. Too panicked, Sun Min ran away, although he was smashed to the ground by falling. But he still has the strength to keep running until his strength is exhausted. He collapsed on the highway. Sure enough, when the male lead group arrived, Sun Min died due to excessive blood loss. The next day, Colonel So came to see Lieutenant Lim. It turned out that she had been separated before. It's just because of the ceiling unless he gives the order to shoot the fat man. At this time, she handed him a USB of confidential documents. But the day before, he and the sergeant were going to check it out, but he was prevented by his superiors. If this is thrown out, then all the bad things are bald. All of them will be exposed. The next day, the general made an appointment to meet the sergeant and the captain. Captain Lim also thought that this case was fine, for on the night before Corporal Na died, he called the captain. But because he was sleepy, so the captain quickly ended the conversation. After all, Corporal Na met Lieutenant Lim, but the captain didn't say anything. Captain Lim also thought that this case was fine, for on the night before Corporal Na died, he called the captain. But because he was sleepy, so the captain quickly ended the conversation. After all, Corporal Na is his junior, so Captain Lim dragged him away from the watchtower. It's a non-bacterial area. It borders North Korea's borders. On the way from there was a soldier, dared to laugh at the lieutenant, and caused the two of them to almost have an accident. Then the Pangolin commander came out to greet them. Very quickly they were straight to the point. It is known that on the day of Corporal Na's death, but unfortunately, a new soldier still had to mine. Instead, Corporal Na risked his life to hold the latch for him, then slowly remove the bomb cord there. But when he stood up, then an explosion took place. In order to conduct the investigation, they questioned the new soldier. His life was saved by Corporal Na. It is known that his name is Shin. It was the grandson who had made a great deal of money, since he had no alibi evidence. So the captain was even more suspicious of this subject. The new soldier always opposes his superiors, and that person is Shin, and the superior is Corporal Na. So they once again question the rookie Shin, but the attitude of the fairy is still very fatherly, deny everything. Instead, Captain Lim gave a piece of evidence. It was confirmed that only Corporal Na and him were in the branch tower that day. From here, the captain made a hypothesis. Shin lured Corporal Na to the branch tower, then he constantly provoked his superiors. And unfortunately, Corporal Na led me. Hearing this, the captain just wanted to break this holy tub, but the dragonfly was stopped in time. At the same time, the sergeant did not go to the task force, but he realized they were holding the USB of confidential documents. Even hinting at defiance, they tossed that USB out. I pray that he gave me a box of Lego toys. Even speaking, he wasn't curious. Why did we send people to the branch tower? Even the commander of the branch tower was here. Realizing that something is wrong, Captain Lim became more and more suspicious of new recruits. So he directly took the subject into a closed room. Without wasting saliva, he directly patted his chewing dust. Then he added dozens of punches to the face. But this whole process, it was all recorded by the camera. That night, the Pangolin commander also revealed the truth. The pseudo-monk is a suffocator. The target he is targeting is new recruits. And in that time, unfortunately, he led away from the bomb. After witnessing the death of his superior, they chose to hide the truth of this case. Because if the story is revealed, Sin will have to appear before a military court, and things will get more complicated. However, it was all the plan of the Brigadier General. Knowing that they are holding the confidential document USB, he lured the Great Majesty to the watchtower, with the aim of letting him investigate the truth, and record the entire process of the captain punching people. They even prepared an article about the new rookie heroic captain. If you don't want that to happen, then they have to return the confidential documents to the Brigadier General. There is no other choice. They have assigned the Central Lake to repair the USB. In the meantime, the center of the lake came across the sister of the first island to appear on the news. Her name is Sua. She works at a human rights center and fight for the right of innocent soldiers to wait. At the same time, Corporal Han had just woken up. Then Sergeant Park said, Jong-hoo hasn't returned to the hat since last night. On the other hand, after being left behind, Trung Taso has switched to being a lawyer. The lieutenant master went to the detention center to meet the fat boy, saying that he will defend him in the upcoming trial, with the aim of helping him receive the lightest punishment. At the same time, the male protagonist discovered all the information in USB 06 copy, but the boss showed him a trick. Can be used to replace the chip inside the drive and decarbonize. Because he was too curious, the male protagonist took a look at it. The content inside and the discovery is a lot. Secret information about the military. Several security documents detail the Fat Boys shooting, which is known during that day's shooting. A soldier named Snail is still alive according to many autopsy reports from the exam. The soldier died because he did not give first aid in time while waiting for a rescue helicopter. Apparently he was only injured after the fat man fired the rescue helicopter of the sister commander. Coming to the rescue was too late to lead to the soldier's connoisseurship, however. When this company is exposed, the military will be subjected to a revolt of criticism from the public. On this side, the general had a press conference with the press wing to publicize about the shooting of the fat boy that caused the soldiers to leave, but Lieutenant Colonel Sister interrupted the words and questions about the military's rescue operation at that moment. The chief general stripped him of his permission. It is believed that all the victims were stunned on the spot, so the girl SUA scolded the general, saying, "After the shooting, a T officer heard the gunshots and immediately picked up the phone. Give the command post through the emergency network, i.e. there is a gap of almost an hour and a half. Before the rescue team arrived at the scene, therefore, the general refused to answer. After that, SUA received a call from the male lead. He revealed the true death of the upper house soldier and make an appointment to meet SUA at the house at the same time, even though it was the day of discharge. The chief corporal general wanted the sergeant to let him carry out the last mission. It was the search for the most soldiers in the middle of the lake. After that, they went to the male protagonist's house together and visited his mother. Here, the mother also told them that Jong-hoo had left her a message that she would be back soon, and their entire conversation was overheard by the drunken father. So he went to see the Suku then, when his eyes were opened by money. He revealed that his son was holding a USB at the security level at the same time, when the sergeant was on his way to search for the whereabouts of Trung-ho. However, the team checked the location of the lake, but the first soldier of the lake was called to the command room, and the chief general forced him to say the location of the middle lake. After knowing the location in his hands, the chief of the Subsuku gathered his forces and began to go after the male lead. The fact that Jong-hoo, after informing the meeting place to the girl SUA, then he directly threw the phone into the drop, and then immediately got on the train and went to the meeting point. But two soldiers recognized him, and when one of the soldiers went to discharge the flood, the other was beaten in a battle. Just like that, the two of them worked together and exchanged programs. After gaining the upper hand, Jong-hoo easily defeated the soldier on the spot. When the tribe arrived at the mine, they only discovered that the juniors were harmed. But very quickly, he discovered the middle lake in the distance. On this side, Jong-hoo had just stumbled down on his chair when the soldiers carried Mrs. Tun to the place. There was no other choice. Jong-hoo directly filtered the blood. Thanks to the non-delinquent bodyguards, plus the fighting power of others, the male protagonist quickly wiped out all the soldiers. In front of him, he was directly eaten and chewed by his jaw. When the male protagonist ran out, the long-haired Num was already in his clothes. He was the one who did the first task with the male lead. It was also the person who was beaten up by the middle of the lake, because his strength was depleted after the last battle. So he easily hit the center of the lake and collapsed on the spot, and even stepped on the USB chip cap at the half-mile. On the other side, the Suha girl came to dance for the meeting point that Jong-hoo had messaged her but couldn't find him. So, Suha suddenly discovered that in her brother's toy jar there was a zip bag containing cider bile and USB. It was the honey that the lake had given to her brother. The center has been returned to the military barracks. At this time, the long-haired Numbness was extremely bitter. After failing to find the first person in the jar, he was kicked out of the unit. Already, his father also won again, causing his family to fall into a dry situation, so he was extremely bitter. He said, "I've been training like crazy for more than a year so that when I see you again I can kill you." The brigadier who played the shovel was also here, and he was angry and numb with his long hair. Because of the crime of trampling on the USB, even though he was able to deal with it, when he opened it, it was a fake. As for the real thing, Jong-hoo has hidden it elsewhere. Also because of helping Jong-hoo, the corporal and sergeant were cursed in the face by the commander. But that's still nothing for the male lead. Because of the theft of classified national documents, it is highly likely that Jong-hoo will be in military prison. But Corporal Han came up with a way, and then announced that he would leave the jar from now on. After that, Corporal Han went to see the Brigadier General, and he brought out a recording. The commander exposed the Brigadier General's true hat, thinking that he had forced himself to arrest the captain to the watchtower for investigation. Meanwhile, he already knew that the truth was covered by the boy. However, it was no coincidence that the commander said so. It was all because Corporal Han had stolen him. Hoa Jia Bin is the most knowledgeable person, is the son of his grandfather. The commander deliberately put Lu Tritam into the DP team. The purpose was to vow to welcome my father. Because when he does, his son will be educated in Boston. Moreover, it is also possible to be born to exempt from the threshold of military service. At this time, Corporal Han took out the recording to threaten to force him to stop the arrest warrant for the male lead. If the two of them accept the request, he will bring the USB to them in court. Naturally, the chief general had to agree. On this side, the long-haired man was on his way to the military prison. When Chen Wei, the old man, called and said that he would stop issuing the order to arrest Trung Ho. But I still don't understand what kind of thing, when the Middle Lake has snatched the Iron Gate. In the convulsion, the car lost control. The long-haired man was locked in the car, and Zhonghu quickly left. At the same time, the girl went to the barracks and asked to see the chief of the park. She brought out the lighter and asked to know all the facts about her brother in the role. During the conversation between the two, Sua recalled the real death of the normal snail. On the corporal's side, in order to keep his promise to the general, he went to ask for a USB stick at the repair shop. But the boss said that the Central Lake had already taken the original table. The chief officer also called and said that the center had fled. So they need to arrest him first and then hand over the USB to the general. The next day also came the day of the trial of the fat man. The chief general threatened the lieutenant so that the fat man would not reveal anything today. Even he apologized to her, but the great commander came to interrupt. And he told his ex-wife that in order to win this trial, she should hold her feet until the center brought the USB stick. Very quickly, the trial took place, and the two sides took turns presenting their personal views. Today, the general said that it is impossible to blame the army enough for the deaths of the soldiers, because no one could have foreseen the fat man's thoughtless actions. In order to redive the situation, Lieutenant Colonel So made an argument. The fat boy was constantly criticized and bullied by his seniors in the fight. Although there were managers who watched, they just stood with their arms crossed. So it led to many other bullying cases in the fight. And the chief general constantly blamed the fat man on his head, insisting that he deliberately killed his comrades. At the same time, the male lead came to the back of the court. So, Corporal Han had been standing here waiting for the photo beforehand, saying that he would hold him to death until the court was over. Suddenly, the long-haired man also appeared here, and the lieutenant ordered him to steal the USB back. Just like that, a battle is inevitable. Because I have been practicing like a buffalo, like a cow for the past year. So the long-haired man's physical strength had reached its limit, and it was easy to weigh both of them at the same time. Until his strength was exhausted, Corporal Han took the opportunity to throw him to the ground. Therefore, he wants Zhonghu to deliver the USB. They even almost tempted them. But Zhonghu let him know that he was not the one who held the USB. At the same time, Captain Lim was invited to be a witness, but he revealed the truth about the death of the snail bottle. He could have been alive. But unfortunately, they sent a rescue helicopter to arrive late. The captain also explained the reason for the helicopter's late arrival. That's because superiors are too busy to issue a helicopter to rescue wounded soldiers to the hospital. Hearing these enthusiastic words, the people present could not help but wonder. At the same time, the captain followed Sua because he was suspicious of the evil holding the USB. Couldn't find any. At this moment, Sergeant Park brought the USB to the court, affirming that this is evidence confirming the captain's testimony. It turned out that this was all Sergeant Park's plan. A few days ago, after Sua came to look for him, Zhonghu also called the sergeant and he made a plan. The sergeant said that he would be the one to bring the USB, and Captain Lim would be a witness to buy time. The rest belonged to Zhonghu and the girl, and the two had to create a trap to outsmart the general's people. Back to the present, after the lieutenant brought the USB over, proving Captain Lim's testimony. The presiding judge accepted the plaintiff's claim for compensation against the government, and they will reinvestigate shady cases in the military. The fat boy received the lightest sentence, but for revealing classified documents that violated national security. So Sergeant Park had to join Juventus. At this point, the male lead and the corporal couldn't help but be heartbroken. Even so, the sergeant still told his juniors to live well. Corporal Han had expired his enlistment, so he bought a ticket to return to his hometown of Etern. Zhonghu continued to complete the remaining military time. But when he returned to the door of the military barracks, he suddenly saw the first soldier get down. It was his beloved senior.